Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Ballads and Bards Bookhouse YouTube channel. I am C.A.Watts, your content curator, and today we are going through the best of the best author updates. Valeria is back from being edited, and so I am able to go through what feedback our editor, Dr. Danny Decillis, has left for me. Let's get started. So, I have he starts off by describing the book as a fairly well-constructed fantasy book built around an inheritance with magical roots and a pair of prophesized twins, undertaking a 7-part adventure to stop the ancient evil from having its way. He says there is a few minor issues. The introduction of magic into the world building and the relationship between the protagonists. So magic is apparent from the beginning, and there are few entries of the world of enchantment more reliable than inheriting an estate from a mysterious older relative. As it is typically aimed at a younger readership, the typical fantasy tropes will be quite apparent, if not seemingly naive, when read by an older reader. Also, the idea is that the ideas presented in the story, while they may represent far larger issues, they have been simplified down quite a lot so that a younger mind can engage in the content and have a greater understanding of exactly what's happening. So, he says that the magical aspects have a bit of a bumpy introduction to the narrative, with novel systems of enchantment and magical narrative frameworks that we find in fantasy books. One of the things readers will be looking for is a clue as to what the rules are. So, what the manifestation of magic will be within the story. If magic is virtually extinct, then any manifestation will be amazing. If it's common and woven into the foundation of the worlds, then, the amazement will be saved for the truly exceptional. Does magic behave according to the laws of physics, or does one need to learn a series of incantations and wand movements? Now, he's saying that I haven't explained exactly how magic works within the Ventura worlds, and there is a specific reason for that, and that's because as a first-hand account from Ranger's perspective, they don't know anything about magic. Everything they're learning is all coming from first-hand experiences, and so because they don't know exactly how magic works, how it's going to manifest in them, whether or not it's going to at all, then there's no way for those rules to be explicitly delivered within the story from their experience until they come across that in, say, books, or if they get that information from someone more knowledgeable from them. Or to them, and that I can only write that organically. I can't just put it in there as an explainer, because to me that just would not, I feel like that would impact the flow. And he describes the flow as being quite smooth and done quite well, so I don't want to interrupt that when what's missing is an understanding of how magic works, what the rules to magic are in Ventura. Because there are many different Venturan worlds, how magic works in each one is going to be different, because while they have all come from their ancestor who has created these worlds, it's the nature versus nurture debate. How they are going to come across magic and how the magic has developed since each world's creation is impacted by the people using it, by the people developing it. They may not have it at all. There are many races throughout all of the Venturan worlds who magic comes naturally to, and there are others that have none at all. And so, much like the story itself, magic occurs naturally and organically where it makes sense to the story and to the individual creatures. So I do have a layout for the entire Ventura series where they gain vital pieces of information throughout each one that then slowly puts the bigger picture together for the final book when we finally receive all of the answers, where everything finally makes sense. And so what he's reading is only the very basic foundations, and what the readers will be getting is only the very basic foundations of the information that we need. And a lot of it isn't going to make sense because it's not meant to yet. And those are the missing pieces of information that I hope will have the reader coming back for more in the next books, because it's going to leave them wondering, well, what about this? I have to read what comes next because I have to know about this. And that's the whole idea. So why did this ancestor invest so much time and energy in these worlds when his own ambitious plans for the estate were incomplete? Any of these tasks might take a person a lifetime, though he seems to have been more or less a normal man otherwise. Why such an ambitious feat? More familiarity about the family's history with magic, and some reflection as to how and why the ancestor performed such huge acts of magical creation when he is seemingly a god might be warranted as well. Well, Ramira is specifically described as someone who was innately magical. It has not been explained how or why he came to have these magics. And again, that is a specific holdout. And it is explained to an extent as to why he created the worlds, and that is because he wanted more magic in our world. So he was aware such creatures existed. Again, doesn't explain why yet. And he loved the magic of creation and all of these different creatures, but in the world in which he lived, those things didn't exist anymore. And it's made explicitly clear from what we know about our world that it's not safe for those sort of magical creatures, that they would be exploited, experimented on, used for profit and gain. We know the world we live in, and so did he, which is why he specifically kept them safe in their own worlds where they would be protected, where they could be safe, where that magic still existed, where people could not prey on them. And that's a very big subsect, a very big part of the storyline. So while we aren't given a lot of explicit information about Ramira, there's a reason why that is kept away from you guys. But the idea behind Ramira developing the worlds is because he loves magic and he loved these creatures and he wanted more of them, but he also wanted them safe and protected. And the idea that the estate was being built at the same time, that's a bit of a misnomer. The worlds were created. He spent much of his life creating those worlds and the manner in which to reach them. The estate was almost an afterthought. It was a place that he developed as a means to act as a gateway, almost, where somewhere where he and his family could live happily, where they could protect the worlds from afar, from our world. And so the estate was a means to an end. They are part and parcel to each other, the creation of the worlds and the building of the estate. And so while, yes, someone could spend their entire life creating such worlds, the estate wasn't the point. He simply used it as a means to better bolster the safety and protection of the worlds that he'd created. Those worlds were his babies. The second issue, the relationship between the protagonists. You've done a smart thing in making the protagonists sisters. Adventures such as this are much easier to write when there are multiple characters to react to things, discuss with one another, debate ethical issues, and so forth. Rogue and Ranger are twins also puts a nice spin on the power differential that might otherwise be present between older and younger siblings, or falling into the traditional gender roles if they are brother and sister. They are a well-matched pair for the most part, with complementary traits. Rogue is better adjusted than Ranger, though she is quiet for parts of the book. Her personality tends to fade into the background, though she is a far more reactive character than Ranger. Yes, Rogue is more does tend to fall to the side for a bit, specifically because the books are written from Ranger's perspective. And if you met the person on which she was based, then you would absolutely agree that she is highly reactive. As for Ranger, Ranger, on the other hand, is a character whose ADHD is foremost part of her character traits. While the ADHD is mentioned and some of the symptoms are involved in the storyline, such as seeing several examples of impulsive actions, but the impulsivity is almost the only attribute of ADHD we see her express. Well, yes and no. My editor may have less experience with ADHD than I have personally, but there are many different varieties. There's a great variety in a great variability in the different symptoms that can be expressed when you have ADHD, and there are many that are not explicitly stated, and that's the point. Diverse characters are so far and few between, particularly in young adult readings, and the idea is that it shouldn't be their identity. It is a part of who they are, but it is not what they are. It is not the be-all and end-all of their existence. So while her ADHD is mentioned, and you can see that there are certain impulsive actions that is quite common in those with ADHD, I haven't explicitly gone out and stated, well, this is something that's happened and it is directly related to her ADHD, because I just don't think it's necessary. It's the same as the non-binary characters and the any characters that are not straight within the books. That may be the case, but that is not the point of their character. It is simply showing the diversity of the worlds that exist, just like the diversity we have in the world we live in. They are there, but they don't exist to fit a specific box where they have specific traits that must be explicitly stated for the reader. They simply exist just like they do here. Overall, the narrative is reasonably structured, and the solution involves a degree of hetero unknown magical ability, which we expected, and some democratic reform. Yes, there is quite a bit of governmental unrest in Valeria, and the existing system of government is apparently literally put into place by their ancestor. Yes, Ramira did place a queen in charge, but again, once he created the initial worlds, they were left to alter, grow, change their world as naturally as was coming to them. So while the races were put in place and the worlds were developed by Ramira, they were certainly not dictated by him. He, like much of the people who believe in God in the real world, believe in free will, so too did Ramira. His idea is that he has given them the life, the setting in which they live, but how they choose to live their lives and how they grow and alter their world is ultimately on the inhabitants of each of the worlds. Style and flow are smooth. Yes. Descriptions are often evocative, although there's a lot of flowing hair falling in sheets, waves, or cascades down to shoulders or hips. In brackets, he's put, that's pretty much a fantasy trope, though. Yes, particularly in the first world, which is a Fae world. Yes, that is how they look. I have gone very traditional because, again, it is aimed at a younger audience. And so I do I have gone down the route of describing them fairly typically as to fit into the images that they may already have of what Fae look like in their minds, as a means of making a text to self connection there, where what they are reading is connected to something they already know, so they're better able to connect with the material. Hooks and transitions are generally very solid, some minor grammatical issues here and there, particularly with pronouns. Yes, because I have used some they pronouns, particularly around the non-binary characters. And I have done that specifically because that's their pronoun. So I have used them appropriately, though to an editor's eye, they do come across as grammatical errors. The use of all caps to indicate shouting is overdone. So that is something I will have to look into. Unless they are like specifically bellowing or screaming at the top of their lungs, I guess I do not specifically need to be using caps. Though he says, please see my notes in the manuscript. So this is just an overview of the feedback he has given me, and it is absolutely excellent. I can definitely update my story based on this feedback to make sure that what you guys get is the strongest possible material. So I will be going over that in the coming weeks. And once I have that final manuscript, it'll be off to the book formatter and then onto your shelves. I'll see you next time.